The story begins with Alan unleashing his most powerful attack with the Holy Sword against the monsters he faced. This move, however, drained a significant portion of his mana. To counter this, Ishua, the party's mana supporter, constantly reopened Alan's manga, since his role was to maintain the group's magical energy flow. Ishua didn't only assist Alan, he also supported the other members, a magic swordsman, a saint, and a sage, by ensuring their mana reserves remained full. Thanks to his efforts, they could continually use their strongest skills without fear of exhaustion. During battles, Ishua was even able to repair their magic sword if necessary and provided crucial healing support by transferring holy magic to the saint, enabling her to sustain her healing spells. With everyone at full mana, Ishua believed victory was assured, making him an indispensable pillar of the team. His presence allowed them to succeed in every quest they undertook. Suddenly, after a few days, Alan unexpectedly expelled Ishua from the party. Shocked and hurt, Ishua tried to explain that removing him would cause their mana to run out rapidly, jeopardizing their chances of winning. However, Alan ignored his warnings, convinced that their mana supply had never been an issue. Ishua argued that he kept this silent to avoid complications, but Alan dismissed his claims, refusing to believe that a simple mana porter could wield such influence. It appeared that Alan's true reason for detesting Ishua was jealousy, fueled by the girls in the party who adored Ishua's seemingly useless presence. Alan falsely claimed that the decision was collective and that Ishua was no longer needed. Struggling to accept this harsh reality, Ishua felt hurt and bewildered as he was asked to leave without explanation. As he walked away, still dejected, Ishua reflected on the role of a mana porter, a vital support in any mana-heavy party responsible for sustaining their energy during battle. Often unrecognized, these individuals stayed in the background, much like how Alan looked down on Ishua. Despite his worries about the party's capability, given the high mana consumption of his comrades, a hero, a saint, a sage, and a magic swordsman, he wondered if they could truly fight effectively while conserving their limited magic. But if their decision to exclude him was final, there was little he could do. Suddenly, Arya, another member of the team, called out to him, addressing him as senpai. Unexpectedly, she hurried toward him with unrestrained enthusiasm, nearly knocking him over as she pressed herself against him with her chest. Ishua momentarily missed the gentle scent of a woman and felt a flicker of warmth amidst the disappointment he carried. He turned to Arya and asked why she was there, but she countered by questioning why he had suddenly abandoned everyone. Arya, accustomed to calling Ishua senpai since their academy days, was surprised when he claimed he hadn't truly left them but was expelled by others, emphasizing that the decision had not been his own. She found it hard to believe, considering how much everyone relied on him for mana. Ishua explained that he had only heard that from Alan, which infuriated Arya enough to cause a faint dark aura to emanate around her. Her anger was directed at the insolent hero disrupting her senpai's reputation. Seeing her understanding and not wishing him to leave, Ishua was relieved. Arya revealed her initial purpose was to bring him back, but she had changed her mind and now intended to follow him instead. Ishua was taken aback since he knew her only dream was to join a hero's party, yet she refused to unite with a hero who had banished his senpai. Arya acknowledged that she had been helping him since their student days. She credited him for her current strength. Consequently, she asked Ishua to take her along on his journey. Sensing the sincerity in her request, Ishua agreed. Yet he was curious about how she managed to find him. Arya hesitated before explaining she had accidentally come across a strand of his hair, which she used in search magic to locate him. Ishua doubted her explanation, suspecting that such behavior was more typical of witches practicing black magic rather than a saint. As they continued walking, Arya inquired about their next move. Ishua decided to head to a nearby town to prepare for their travel plans. Suddenly, they encountered people crying out for help. An abandoned carriage was under attack by wolf-like monsters. Ishua chose to intervene, aware that Arya would agree, and together they rushed toward the scene. Ishua instructed Arya to eliminate the monsters while he channeled mana into her. The wolves were B-rank demons, generally challenging for beginners, but Ishua trusted Arya's saintly abilities. However, She appeared intent on overdoing it, prepared to unleash a high-tier spell to clear the pack. She even cast multiple enchantments on her attack, forcing Ishua to quickly analyze and modulate her magic circles to prevent her power from becoming destructive. After making the necessary adjustments, Arya released a radiant attack that spread across the area. The bright beam shattered and expanded like a burst, catching both people and monsters off guard. Even undead creatures hundreds of meters away were struck by Arya's holy attack, resulting in the purification of the entire area. Once the tension eased, Arya giggled softly and inquired about Ishua's progress with his new magic. Ishua admitted he had gone too far, cleansing the entire area of impurities so thoroughly that it now resembled a sacred sanctuary. Her light-hearted laughter continued as he hoped she would learn to control her powers better and avoid such overexcitement. Nearby merchants observed these two with curiosity. Afterward, Ishua guided them onward to the closest village, for which he expressed his gratitude. The merchant explained that he simply wanted to thank them for saving his life and noted how unique their magic skills were. He marveled at their ability to transfer magic so effectively and was struck by Arya's boast that only her senior, Ishua, could achieve such feats. She praised him for his seemingly endless mana supply and his talent for understanding complex magic at a glance, then adjusting its power accordingly. Clearly, Ishua deserved the title of a superhuman. As a waitress brought Hugh nuts, the merchant politely told her not to serve unrefined nuts to those who had just saved lives. She apologized to her employer, mentioning that their village had recently faced a decline in mana reserves, prompting a shortage of refined resources. She explained that their small community struggled to maintain their refineries and farming tools, which led to equipment becoming inefficient and costly to repair, costs they could no longer afford. Their operations had come to a halt, and if the situation persisted, the village might face extinction. Arya and Ishua exchanged looks, recognizing shared resolve. Ishua assured the merchant he would help resolve their mana crisis. Grateful yet embarrassed, the man couldn't hide his appreciation for Ishua's continued support. Arya explained that her senior was naturally kind and wouldn't turn away someone in need, even after previous aid. Ishua approached the battered refinery, noting its state of disrepair. He acknowledged that long-term maintenance had been neglected. After close inspection, he felt confident he could handle restoring it. Placing his hands on the metal tanks, he began channeling magic, filling each container swiftly and effortlessly, astonishing everyone present. It was a feat none believed any human could perform so easily. Ishua was no stranger to this task. He had practiced for years, pouring mana into inanimate objects, his magic sword, tools, and equipment, ensuring their functionality. As he worked, he also infused the containers with attributes to clean dirt and rust. When he finished, the entire rundown facility transformed into a fully revitalized refinery. The villagers watched in disbelief. Not only had Ishua restored the storage tanks, but he had also cleaned rust, repaired structural weaknesses, turning the dilapidated plant into a new, efficient facility. Ishua made some crucial adjustments to ensure the machinery would operate smoothly for an extended period. Although he believed himself still to be an amateur in such tasks, the villagers quickly reassured him that his work was far more expert than he thought. The effort he put in was comparable to what dozens of top engineers would typically undertake. Eager to learn his name, the villagers pressed Ishua, who simply introduced himself as an ordinary porter. Yet, the villagers found it hard to believe he was just a common man, having seen his extraordinary skills firsthand. They then inquired about Arya, to which she responded with her name and her role as a saint. She carried herself with a serene presence and a gentle smile while introducing herself. Her aura of sanctity left the villagers stunned, leading them to the conclusion that if Ishua brought a saint with him, he must be a hero. Convinced of this, they expressed their late gratitude, considering Ishua a true hero. Ishua was taken aback and wanted Arya's help in clarifying their misunderstanding, but she was already lost in her own world, imagining herself and her master as a perfect match. Ishua silently wished she would return to her usual saintly bearing. Nevertheless, the villagers had already decided to host a celebration in honor of their hero who had saved the village. Ishua attempted to correct their perceptions, explaining it was a misunderstanding. However, the villagers thought he was being modest and suspected he might have hidden motives or circumstances. They admired the hero's genuine humility, contrasting it with common scoundrels who pretended to be heroes to exploit others. Frustrated, Ishua gave up, realizing they would not listen. Then Arya, intoxicated and in a warm-hearted mood, threw herself onto him, proclaiming him her hero. Although he felt nervous due to her closeness, he soon dismissed his discomfort, more due to her drunken state than anything else. Ishua noticed that Arya had already been drinking heavily and urged the villagers to stop her, fearing she couldn't handle alcohol. But she had already exhausted her reserves and even attempted to kiss him passionately. Meanwhile, elsewhere, in front of an abandoned dungeon, Alan was devising plans to conquer it with only the three of them. Mythia, the party's mage and sage, and Ritter, the master swordsman, believed it was reckless to venture into the dungeon without Ishua and Arya. Yet, Alan insisted they ignore those doubts, having already dismissed them. He told them to follow him, confident they would prove that they didn't need their previous companions. Reluctant but obedient, Mythia and Ritter hesitated but followed Alan into the depths of the dungeon, as their leader commanded. This marked the beginning of the story of a fallen hero and a manor porter whose resilience would soon earn him the title of hero. Meanwhile, Ishua and Arya departed from Axis village, receiving a heartfelt farewell from the villagers. Arya was delighted to see the villagers' warm farewell, feeling proud of the hero Ishua had become. She regarded him as the true hero she believed him to be, and with a bright smile, she then asked him about their next destination. Ishua explained that he intended to return his hero's license before registering as an adventurer. To do so, he would head back to the beginner town of Norbish. Meanwhile, Alan was dispatching monsters one after another with his holy sword's formidable techniques, feeling increasingly confident that clearing this dungeon would be straightforward, even without a mana support. In this world, dungeons are ranked from E to SS, with even seasoned adventurers risking defeat inside the most formidable ones like the current one Alan faced. Mythia and Ritaru understood this well, remaining vigilant and advising Alan to stay cautious, conserve his mana, and be prepared for their return, especially since Ishua was absent. When Alan heard Ishua's name again, he proudly declared he didn't need him, insisting that fleeing a dungeon meant showing cowardice. He believed mana shortages were rare. Mythia, however, explained that Ishua's presence concealed their mana issues, as he envisioned an ideal mana porter supporting the team seamlessly, without their awareness. As Mythia narrowly dodged a monster's attack, she emphasized the importance of not letting enemies surround them. Ritaru, the wise mage, cast spells that boosted Alan's offensive power, enabling him to vanquish monsters with a single blow. Alan then questioned whether the party was truly so strong without Ishua, implying their independence from his aid. Suddenly, a sense of unease crept over him. Behind Mythia, a lizard man appeared and alerted her of danger. Noticing she was fighting with daggers instead of her magic sword, Alan understood she intended to conserve mana, fearing exhaustion without Ishua's support. Ritter mentioned that her mana was nearing her limit, which further annoyed Alan, as he couldn't tolerate the thought of his party being so fragile. He attempted to showcase his strength with another attack using his holy sword, but abruptly, a sharp headache struck him, leaving him writhing in pain. He shouted in confusion, questioning what was happening. Mythia calmly explained that it was due to his dwindling mana. Alan refused to believe he was experiencing a mana shortage, as such issues had never happened to him before. His substantial mana reserves usually protected him from scarcity during normal combat, but ever since he adopted more demanding techniques with his holy sword, he had grown accustomed to consuming large amounts of mana. The king had foreseen that the hero might face mana depletion because of his sword's high consumption, so he had assigned Ishua to the team from the beginning. That's why Alan had never experienced shortages before. Mythia then asked if Alan could stand, but after realizing his vulnerability, he was paralyzed with fear. Fear gripped him as he faced the monstrous lizard creature, aware that although he could often defeat such foes, victory now was impossible. The lizard man perceived him merely as prey and was undeniably stronger than Alan. Instinctively, Alan turned to escape, leaving Mthaya behind in the chaos. Instead of risking his life fighting alongside her, he ordered Ritaru to follow and protect him. Ritaru hesitated, worried about abandoning Mthaya in danger, but Alan shouted, "It's better if he escapes this place." His priority was clear: survival over heroics. Hearing this, Ritter's resolve hardened. She advanced toward Mthaya, even as Alan questioned her actions. Ritaru refused to abandon Mthaya while she was fighting for her life and starkly told Alan he had no right to call himself a hero. Aware that her mana was depleted, Ritter realized her only option was to use her staff for physical attacks, to strike the lizard man from the side. Alan was taken aback to see a sage resort to melee combat, while Mthaya, wielding daggers, slashed at the creature's limbs through the openings Ritter created. Mthaya felt relief on hearing Ishua's advice echo in her mind, to learn how to fight without relying on mana for emergencies. At that moment, they heard Alan scream as he was cornered by a second lizard man. Mthaya quickly intervened, wrapping her hands around the creature's throat and saving the hero who, ideally, should be protecting others. Her resolve was unshakable. Unlike Alan, she refused to abandon her companions and vowed not to give up until everyone escaped alive. Eventually, they emerged from the dungeon, exhausted from the battle, fighting without magic and carrying Alan to safety. Mthaya appreciated her ongoing sword training, realizing that her self-reliance on physical skill had been vital. Ritter acknowledged her own contribution, proud to have played a part. Yet, amid their relief, Alan's anger erupted. He snapped at them, furious about their seemingly easy escape. He scorned their failure, claiming they had only conquered a weak dungeon and retreated like cowards. He attributed their defeat to the improper use of weapons. Ritter was unnecessarily moving her staff as if wielding a sword, and Mthaya was relying on daggers instead of her magic blade. Alan declared he had dealt with most enemies and dismissed Ritter and Mthaya as mere baggage, the cause of their stumble. Mthaya reached her limit. She shouted that Alan was to blame, accusing him of running out of mana first and thus causing their failure. Alan dismissed it as a mere headache, but Mthaya challenged him, demanding he try wielding his holy sword right then and there. Ritaru intervened, calming Mthaya and remarking that arguing with someone like Alan was pointless. Mthaya acknowledged this, her disappointment and anger evident as she continued to gaze at the hero with piercing eyes. Alan despised being looked at with those condescending eyes, yet the other two decided to leave him behind and rest in a nearby village. The sting of that disdainful gaze lingered in his mind as he followed them to the village just a short distance away. They arrived at Axis Village, a place Ishua and Arya had visited earlier, and were welcomed by its inhabitants. Alan introduced himself boldly as a hero and explained to a village woman that they sought shelter after their failed attempt to conquer a dungeon. Her eyes widened in surprise upon hearing another hero had appeared on the same day, and she reminisced about her previous encounter with a humble, kind-hearted hero, Saint Arya. Curious, Alan blurted out a question. What was the reason behind their recent failure, and why was the man they met being called a hero? The woman's face darkened, and she sharply told Alan not to speak ill of their village's hero. Undeterred, Alan insisted that the hero was nothing but a scammer, a fool who had been banished by him. Mthaya and Ritaru were shocked to learn of this supposed banishment, especially since Alan's story suggested Ishua hadn't left voluntarily. Realizing he might have spoken too freely, Alan quickly attempted to change the subject, asking the villagers for their best offerings, mana recovery potions and other supplies to rest properly. When asked if they were willing to accept payment for their generosity, Alan scoffed and claimed it was the villagers who should feel honored to serve a hero. His arrogant attitude immediately damaged their perception of him. Mthaya and Ritaru hurried to stop his reckless words, but he went on to spout nonsense, insisting that such exchanges only happen under extraordinary circumstances. Ritaru, seeing the hostility mounting among the villagers, told Mthaya it was useless to argue, as they already saw the truth. The villagers grew increasingly hostile, suspecting the visitors to be vile humans pretending to be heroes for the sake of greed. Alan stubbornly insisted that Ishua was the false one, but the villagers disagreed. They explained that Ishua had never accepted their thanks and was genuinely different from pretenders like Alan. Still, Alan maintained his claim of authenticity, until suddenly he was struck by an egg, and stones and other objects began flying toward them. The villagers refused to tolerate any insult against their true hero, Ishua, and ordered the impostors to leave. Mthaya urged Alan to retreat quickly, and he, furious, fell back in anger. Later, Mthaya and Ritaru confronted him about his reckless comment on banishing Ishua from their party. Alan snapped at them to be quiet, insisting he did so to remove someone unworthy of being a hero. They couldn't believe how easily he had dismissed such a kind and capable individual and resolved to find Ishua immediately to apologize. Mthaya emphasized that they wouldn't even be able to clear a ranked dungeon without Ishua's help. But hearing his name again, Alan lashed out, accusing her and Ritaru of holding him back. He shouted at them, warning that they risked being expelled from the party if they chose to stay. Once Ishua heard this, the others fell silent, and Alan suddenly realized he might have spoken out of turn. Mthaya and Ritaru shot him cold, resentful glares, recalling that Alan had always been like that. Mthaya declared she had no reason to stay now that Ishua was gone. Ritaru added that Alan didn't deserve the title. Ritaru decided to activate her detection skill using a strand of Ishua's hair she had kept for such a purpose. Surprisingly, Mthaya also possessed a hair of Ishua's, saved in case she needed to locate him with her own detection magic. Both women laughed at the coincidence, a clear sign of their possessiveness over Ishua. Using their magic, they discovered Ishua's current whereabouts, Norbish Town. Meanwhile, Alan, observing all this, felt a surge of envy towards Ishua. He couldn't understand why, as a hero, he should suffer because of a simple mana porter. An idea struck him. He would retrieve Ishua back into the party, assuming the man was struggling after being ousted. He was certain Ishua would be overjoyed at the chance to rejoin. Using his party detection skill, able to track party members via their licenses, Alan located Ishua in Nobish Town. Without hesitation, he headed there, eager to reclaim the so-called trash mana porter. At the same time, Ishua had arrived in Nobish Town with Arya, beginning their journey. They headed straight to the Adventurers Guild. Arya first checked her status to determine her solo rank. Her stats hovered around B rank for most attributes except intelligence, which was at the top S rank. The receptionist remarked that such high stats were expected from a saint. After her assessment, Arya encouraged Ishua to get himself tested next. Ishua felt anxious. It was his first time having his status checked, and he was about to register as a new adventurer. He rested his hand against the crystal that gauges an individual's status, and the moment he did, the crystal erupted with a brilliant glow infused with magic. Spectators and the receptionist were taken aback, as such a radiant response was unexpected from a monoporter, a low-ranked individual. The receptionist quickly examined his stats, which all hovered near the higher end, falling within the B and A tiers. Yet, the most astonishing detail was his mana capacity, ranked SSS, an entirely unknown designation until that moment. With no precedent for such a rank, this discovery sparked great curiosity. The receptionist pondered whether the measuring device malfunctioned, but Arya added that she had never seen Ishua's mana once run dry, providing strong proof that his stats were accurate. From this, it was decided that Ishua and Saint Arya's party would be classified as C-rank adventurers from the outset. This shocked others, as no one before had started at any rank higher than E or F. Ishua, however, had no desire for special privileges, yet this was far from his primary concern. The crowd's real interest lay in recruiting him and Arya into their groups. Promises of superior treatment were made, but Ishua found himself overwhelmed by the sudden surge of offers. He also noticed Arya struggled with the social demands, clearly shy and uncomfortable. To deflect attention, he told everyone to back off, explaining he was merely a monoporter with little to offer. At that moment, a girl shouted at the adventurers, scolding them for bothering Ishua and urging them to leave him alone. Her words sent a ripple of fear through the crowd, causing them to fall silent. She then stepped forward and introduced herself as Diana, a sword saint. Ishua wondered if she was a renowned adventurer or someone notable. Someone nearby clarified that Diana was indeed an S-rank adventurer belonging to hero Lillian's party, the group that recently defeated Ifrit, one of the 4 demon lords under the direct command of the Demon King. Ishua was surprised to learn of another hero's team operating nearby. Stepping closer, Diana apologized for the disturbance and expressed a wish. She wanted to invite him to join her party instead. Ishua had not expected even a sword saint to make such a direct recruitment. Yet, he declined, stating he preferred to work alone for now, accompanied by Arya. Diana explained that their leader was highly capable and believed Lillian would be an excellent commander. Arya, however, voiced suspicion, recalling recent difficulties with a hero who failed to understand Ishua's unique abilities. Diana assured her that Lillian was nothing like that. Despite this, Arya remained unconvinced, criticizing the leader's failure to meet those she wished to recruit. The sharp remark silenced Diana, who had no retort. Ishua then sincerely apologized, explaining that Arya's concerns stemmed from her care for him, not rudeness. Despite this being his first encounter with Diana, Ishua sensed a genuine trust forming, and he held no ill feelings toward her. Lillian, the leader of her group, was undoubtedly a remarkable individual. Yet recently, she had been expelled from her party, leaving her hesitant to collaborate with outsiders. Consequently, she preferred to work only with familiar allies. Diana quickly grasped Lillian's intentions, though she felt a pang of disappointment that her own party had not been chosen. Overcome with emotion, she began to cry, distressed by her failure to fulfill Lillian's request to recruit Ishua. Ishua, observing her, sensed her apparent clumsiness on the surface, but from her attitude, he recognized her genuine talent and sincerity. Still, misfortune struck at an inopportune moment. Had circumstances been different, he would have readily accepted her offer. To him, Lillian must be an extraordinary hero, for she managed to have someone as dedicated as Diana in her ranks. Diana returned to Lillian to apologize for not completing her mission. She found Lillian immersed in practicing her magic, noticing that even without a magical profession, her circles grew increasingly intricate and refined with each passing day. Once Lillian finished her training and opened her eyes, she listened to Diana's report about her failure. Understanding that everyone has their own circumstances, Lillian reflected quietly. Diana remembered Lillian as a natural genius, having acquired her hero role immediately after birth, especially after defeating one of the 4 heavenly demons. Despite her brilliance, Lillian remained committed to serious training, free of arrogance. Nonetheless, her duties as a hero often barred her from experiencing the joys of youth, and her emotions gradually dulled, except when she heard a particular name that stirred her. When Lillian hugged Diana, tears welled up as she questioned whether Ishua hated her. Diana, unfamiliar with Ishua's significance to Lillian, reassured her that Ishua had asked to meet Lillian personally. She suggested that next time Lillian should go herself, but Lillian was too embarrassed to consider that. Diana wondered when Ishua had become her first love. Upon discovering Ishua was present in the same town that day, Lillian became visibly distraught. Diana proposed that they secretly follow him and look for opportunities to support him when he needed help. Lillian agreed eagerly, resolved to act stealthily. Diana was pleased to see Lillian acting her age. It was natural for a girl her age to fall in love. She hoped that meeting Ishua would turn out to be a meaningful encounter for Lillian. The following morning at the Adventurers Guild, Ishua and Arya arrived to begin their first quest together as a party of 2. Inside, they encountered a chaotic scene of adventurers fighting fiercely over tasks, each trying to claim the next job. Ishua preferred to steer clear of the disorder. Meanwhile, Arya noticed a stack of requests on a side table, which Ishua also examined. The guild receptionist greeted him and observed that he was looking at the quest requests. Ishua read through several options, including assignments to subjugate undead beings, fix damaged power reactors, and even one seeking a lost cat. Arya had a fondness for cats and wished to adopt one, while Ishua decided to take on all the quests laid out on the table. The receptionist questioned whether he was truly willing to accept them all, to which Ishua nodded affirmatively, expressing his interest. The receptionist regarded him as particularly kind, thinking he was willing to undertake tasks others considered unworthy, perhaps because they were of little reward. Ishua, however, believed these quests held importance, especially since someone needed to care for the missing cats. Later, he employed a clever technique to attract cats in the town square, explaining to Arya that he was tuning into a specific wavelength that cats could sense. Eventually, he located a cat from a quest, with Diana and Lillian secretly watching him from behind. They admired Ishua's skill, realizing that even seasoned magic users or swordmasters could spend an entire day or longer to find a single feline. Yet he accomplished the task in just half an hour. Their next assignment involved subjugating undead creatures, a speciality of Arya's, who rapidly and effortlessly dispatched the monsters within seconds. Arya often received scolding from Ishua whenever she overused her power. Meanwhile, Lillian and Diana watched in astonishment, as those undead appeared to vanish with ease, and they had never seen magic output of such intensity. Lillian was eager for her turn to assist Ishua in a future task. At a subsequent mission involving the filtration of power reactors, Ishua single-handedly completed the entire job, without showing any sign of fatigue. It was straightforward for him, prompting him to wonder if he should even be compensated for such effortless work. Lillian, meanwhile, was practically desperate to find a moment to help him next time. Soon, a gang of ruffians appeared, furious that the task of reactor filtration had been delegated to someone else. They belonged to a rival company, and because of them, the maintenance situation was compromised. The gang ambushed Ishua altogether, causing Lillian to see her chance to step in. Instead of engaging directly, Ishua calmly sent an innocent bystander to the rear and carefully considered how to handle the attackers without damaging the nearby reactors. He decided to cast a broad mana barrier around the group. The gang members initially felt no danger, but suddenly, their heads began to ache. Ishua had created a mana field, more precisely, a dense ring of concentrated mana, that typically enhances mana recovery within its zone. However, for those unaccustomed to it, the intense concentration could cause severe headaches. One enemy managed to remain standing despite the pain. Ishua aimed to incapacitate rather than injure him, so he supplied the target with an excess of mana, overwhelming his system and rendering him unconscious instantly, before he could resist. Diana and Lillian were amazed, unaware that Ishua possessed such precise control over his magic. He managed the situation expertly on his own, demonstrating remarkable skill. As Diana learned more about him, her admiration grew, particularly for his inventive use of his SSS-ranked magic. Meanwhile, Lillian missed her chance again, which left her feeling frustrated, though she resigned herself to attempting next time. Diana, however, was increasingly convinced that a situation demanding Ishua's aid was unlikely to arise. Meanwhile, the town welcomed an unexpected visitor, Hero Alan, intent on convincing Ishua to rejoin his party and restore past harmony. The following day, Ishua visited the Adventurers Guild as usual to accept quests, now recognized by many for his willingness to assist even with less profitable tasks. The receptionist commented that ISA had gained popularity in just a few days, though Ishua dismissed her praise as a misunderstanding, claiming he wasn't doing anything extraordinary. At that moment, Alan appeared and called out to Ishua, startling him, especially because Alan had come all this way. Ishua inquired about the whereabouts of Mthaya and Ritaru, only to be told that Alan had expelled them for being incompetent. Ishua found this unbelievable, as he believed they were talented, but Alan showed no concern. He straightforwardly ordered Ishua to rejoin his hero party, ignoring the apparent foolishness of such an appeal. The gathered onlookers chuckled upon hearing Alan's bold words, and one of them recounted the story of Arya's warning about the naive hero who had banished Ishua. In response, Alan shouted, "Does he even understand who he's talking to?" A bystander replied that he should know, since Alan was trying to command 2 C-rank adventurers. This revelation stunned Alan. Beginners are typically F or E rank. Yet witnesses insisted that both Ishua and Arya were extraordinary, and even a novice could see Alan was struggling without Ishua's magic. Embarrassed by the condescension, Alan hated being looked down upon and grew angry. Ishua, tired of the confrontation, firmly declined Alan's offer and turned away to select his next quest. Alan's face clouded with frustration as he realized Ishua refused and even mocked him, though these were weakling's words. Burning with the desire to demonstrate his strength, Alan grasped his sword's hilt. Suddenly, Diana stepped forward and ordered him to halt. She made it clear that fighting within the guild was strictly prohibited. If Alan was determined to display his power, she would be his opponent. She declared she was more than capable of standing against him anytime. Her confident stance and unwavering resolve momentarily surprised Alan, who recognized the dangerous aura she emitted. Deciding that further conflict was unwise, he retreated and fled the scene. Diana was disappointed in the hero, as he failed to grasp the difference between their abilities until she openly showed her hostility. Ishua expressed his gratitude to Diana for her assistance, and she now understood what he meant by having a bad experience with a hero. She hoped Alan would no longer trouble Ishua. Subsequently, Ishua spent a week completing his regular quests until he encountered one that directed him to the elf village to report any anomalies to the guild. Arya was surprised to see that the reward for this task was 30 gold coins, significantly more than typical quests offered. Ishua remained cautious, unwilling to risk Arya's safety on an unfamiliar assignment. He was inclined to refuse. When the guild receptionist noticed his hesitation, she pressed him to accept the quest, explaining that all he had to do was visit the elf village and report back that everything was normal. Curious, Ishua asked why others hadn't taken it. She hesitated before replying, "There's a reason for that," and avoided giving specifics. In truth, the guild had assigned this quest directly to Ishua, intending to reward him specially through a seemingly simple mission, as he had only been active for about a week. They felt that his dedication warranted this rare reward. Though it struck Ishua as unfair to receive such consideration after so little time, he acknowledged that his efforts justified the assignment. She asked him to consider it as a sightseeing trip, and when he tried to decline, Arya eagerly chimed in, excited about exploring the elf village. She insisted they take the quest, seeing it as a chance for a vacation. Recognizing her fatigue from constant questing, Ishua decided to go along and accepted. This pleased both the receptionist and Arya. Meanwhile, Lillian, overhearing the conversation, became interested in accompanying them to the elf village, hoping to find an opportunity to earn Ishua's trust. Diana regarded Lillian's stealth skills with admiration, surprised at how effectively she had improved despite her status as a hero. She attempted to inform Lillian that Ishua wouldn't need their help, but Lillian had already approached the receptionist, inquiring about quests near the elf settlement. The receptionist scanned available assignments and found one that involved subjugating a mutated ogre king. However, it was a rank quest, currently the most challenging task available. Lillian believed that even a rank quest posed no problem for her, and the receptionist agreed. Without hesitation, they decided to depart immediately for the elf village, aiming to complete the quest and seize an opportunity to earn Ishua's trust. 3 days later, Ishua and Arya arrived near the elf village by carriage. They marveled at the enormity of the world tree Yggdrasil, which was visible from many kilometers away. Ishua remembered that the world tree had been a legendary guardian of the elven settlement for over 2,000 years. Arya added that the origin of the world tree began as a seed planted by an angel in lands dominated by monsters. Over time, this seed grew into a massive tree around which humans could coexist peacefully, free from fear of predatory beasts. According to legend, the world tree served as the guardian of the entire realm, shielding it from monstrous threats. Ishua recalled that Arya was particularly fond of this story. Yet, an unsettling feeling crept over Ishua as he sensed something strange in the flow of mana surrounding the world tree. He hoped he was merely imagining things. Meanwhile, Lillian and Diana were engaged in combat with a horde of monsters. The chaos of the fight caused them to lose sight of Ishua. Diana noted that their situation couldn't be helped. They were currently standing at the base of the legendary tree. If the monsters amassed here, they must be prevented from advancing onto the main route, potentially causing havoc. Diana also found herself troubled by the dense miasma swirling around them, which strained her lungs severely. Lillian cast a powerful healing spell on her, and Diana expressed her gratitude, knowing it was only a temporary relief. The trio needed to eliminate the monsters and clear the oppressive miasma at once. Suddenly, they were ambushed by a considerably stronger creature, the mutated Ogre King, the very target of their subjugation quest. Diana was relieved, thinking this encounter would save trouble, and she charged forward with her sword aimed at the beast. However, her confidence shattered when her blade failed to leave any mark. The Ogre King didn't even need to dodge. Puzzled, Diana wondered why her attacks seemed useless. Lillian explained that the monster had evolved by absorbing vast amounts of mana from its surroundings and had been promoted from S rank to a higher tier, possibly SS rank. Realizing this, Diana asked Lillian for help in distracting the creature. Lillian activated her unique skill linked to her hero class, despite the significant drain on her magic reserves. This skill, called the Inherent Barrier Fantasy World, allowed her to create a separate, virtual realm where she could summon party members and enemies to fight under her control. It was a rare and powerful ability, befitting a hero, since her imagination dictated what happened within this realm. Within it, they fought with a decisive advantage. Lillian then enhanced Diana's sword to its utmost power, making it the strongest weapon she could envision. This was their best chance to defeat the Ogre King. Diana swung with all her might, believing her attack would finally bring the beast down. Lillian shared her confidence, yet their hope quickly faded. The Ogre King survived the strike, its tough hide deflecting the blow effortlessly. Neither of them had seen a creature withstand such a powerful attack before. Not even one of the 4 heavenly demons had managed to do so. They understood then that the monster's magic resistance was exponentially higher. Lillian warned Diana that her mana was running low, and that she needed to remain motionless to sustain the fantasy realm. Diana repeatedly attempted to strike down the Ogre King, but her sword deflected each attack, gradually exhausting her. Seizing the moment she let her guard down, the Ogre King launched a powerful blow with his club, striking her in the torso and causing her to cough blood. The force of the hit sent her flying backward. Meanwhile, Lillian found herself defenseless as the monster approached, her heart pounding with fear. She desperately wished to survive, dreaming of becoming a legendary hero who would defeat the Demon Lord. Yet, as the situation grew more grim, she began to doubt her chances of survival. Regret filled her for failing to protect Ishua, feeling helpless in this moment. Suddenly, she heard Ishua's voice instructing Arya to stay close as he attempted to enter an invisible space surrounding her. Lillian had believed no one could access her protected zone without her consent, but Ishua seemed to have entered it freely, simply grasping its edges like any ordinary place. Throughout her life, Lillian had attracted attention, but mostly because others assumed her too young to be truly dangerous, and they thought it would be easy to deceive her for personal gain. Always cautious, she often wandered alone. Once, she had tripped while walking and dropped her teddy bear into mud. She started crying, feeling utterly helpless, when Ishua's voice was the first to reach her, asking if she was all right. That moment remained etched in her memory, especially because she was near death and needed help. If she were to die without making a difference for someone she cherished, she knew she would regret it fiercely. Luckily, Ishua appeared at just the right moment, pulling her away from danger. As she caught her breath, she looked up, grateful and trembling, while he asked if she was okay. Lillian expressed her thanks for saving her, her nerves evident as she stood so close to him. Ishua recalled that they had met years earlier at the castle, but now their focus was on Diana's perilous state. He scanned the surroundings, trying to grasp what had transpired. Just hours earlier, Ishua had been outside the elf village, battling monsters for diversion since they couldn't gain entry due to certain restrictions. Arya was frustrated because she believed the village was accessible, despite the guide's assurances. She vented her anger on the monsters, repeatedly complaining about their denied entrance. While clearing monsters from the forest, Ishua noticed an unusual number of high-ranked creatures, as if they had wandered into a demon realm. Unsurprisingly, Arya, confident as always, didn't realize she was fighting dangerous rank monsters until moments before. Ishua wished she could make her more aware of the dangers lurking around them. As they observed, the miasma surrounding the area visibly thickened, signaling an escalation in its spread. Ishua swiftly activated his monolink field, constructing a protective barrier that also filtered the inhaled air, shielding them from further contamination. They then commenced a cautious patrol around the village perimeter to assess potential threats and safeguard the residents. During their reconnaissance, Ishua detected an anomaly in a particular spot, sensing that unusual phenomena were unfolding far beyond the scope of a simple leisure quest. Guided by instinct, he headed toward the source of the strange sensation. Eventually, he arrived at a location where Lillian was engaged in combat within an ethereal barrier, a fantasy realm of her own creation. Arya, noticing it too, wondered aloud whether the strange phenomenon was linked to the miasma infection. Ishua examined the scene and quickly diagnosed a complex magical array at play. Recognizing its intricacy, he considered the possibility of creating an opening into the mysterious space. He instructed Arya to stay close as they approached the barrier. Lillian was visibly amazed. Ishua had managed to analyze a fragment of her fantasy world, a feat she herself had struggled with despite years of practice. When Ishua asked if she had crafted this space herself, she nodded affirmatively. At that moment, he realized the girl he had encountered earlier was actually the hero Lillian herself. Suddenly, an ogre burst into their reunion with a fierce attack. Ishua promptly understood that the creature had been mutated through absorption of miasma, evolving into a higher-tier being. He responded instantly by channeling all his magical energy into a powerful attack, then swiftly issued commands to Arya to heal Diana. Using her healing magic, Arya swiftly closed Diana's wounds, restoring her strength. Once Diana awoke, her first concern was for Lillian. Seeing Arya and Ishua, she wondered about their presence. Arya explained that she couldn't purify the miasma inhaled by Diana, so Ishua took it upon himself to cleanse her of the infection using pure mana. Diana was amazed at how she felt completely well, recognizing that such a method was a significant breakthrough. Ishua modestly said he had simply learned a few tricks to prevent himself from appearing as a weak Minorder. Lillian then launched a barrage of fireballs at the mutated ogre, but each attack failed to inflict notable damage. She continued casting repeatedly to wear the beast down, fully aware of how challenging it was to sustain multiple spells in quick succession. Frustrated by the lack of impact, she decided to step up as a hero, expressing her joy at finally reuniting with Ishua. She resolved to stay behind and hold the monster at bay, vowing this on her pride as a hero. Ishua admired her bravery. Her readiness to sacrifice herself was inspiring. Unlike Alan, who would never risk his life for others, Lillian's instinct to protect others without hesitation was clear. Still, Ishua had no intention of abandoning her and told her she couldn't defeat the creature alone. Confused about why he wasn't leaving, she watched in silence. Then Ishua turned to Arya and requested her usual support, prompting her to cast multiple buffs and healing spells on everyone present. While Arya concentrated on bolstering the group's defenses, Ishua managed all the mana costs, allowing his companions to use their skills without restraint. Arya's focus was on providing essential support, her powers as a saint now amplified infinitely thanks to Ishua's blessings, rendering them nearly invulnerable. Diana and Lillian could continue fighting relentlessly, unburdened by exhaustion. Ishua nodded, urging them to press the attack. Diana was the first to breach the Ogre King's defenses, slicing a small wound into its massive belly. Lillian observed that their strikes were finally beginning to inflict real damage. Suddenly, Arya released a blinding beam of holy energy directly at the beast. Diana had witnessed such assaults before, but experiencing it up close revealed the sheer destructive power packed into that single beam. Yet, it only left a tiny scratch, suggesting an extended battle lay ahead. Ishua had already devised a plan to end it efficiently by channeling pure holy mana into the monster's body. Lillian understood immediately, and Ishua explained that pouring a large amount of holy energy into the miasma-based creature would trigger its undoing. Instead of evolving, it would weaken gradually. His theory proved accurate. The Ogre King began to diminish, its form shrinking back to a mere rank 1 monster. Now they could carve through it with ease. Diana then requested Lillian's aid, and she conjured the strongest sword she could imagine. Ishua was astounded by her craftsmanship. With all her strength, Diana swung the blade and struck down the Ogre King, ending the fight. Subsequently, she clasped hands with Ishua, expressing her gratitude and formally introducing her leader. Diana then urged Lillian to greet him properly. The hero nervously spelled out her name. Ishua remarked that they had met before at the castle. Lillian blushed, surprised to realize he remembered her. Ishua noted that Lillian might be even more timid than Arya. Later, Diana mentioned it was unusual to see so much miasma lingering near the World Tree. They decided to travel to the elf village to investigate, but along the way, they witnessed a section of the World Tree withering away, signs of an impending catastrophe. Lillian urged them to hurry to the elf settlement to assess the situation. Ishua appreciated her reliability, as expected from a hero. Upon reaching the village, the guards recognized Ishua and Arya, recalling their previous visit. Lillian introduced herself as a hero and explained her purpose: to investigate the area around the elf village. The guard hesitated, questioning her authenticity, since another individual claiming hero status had entered the village earlier, and the situation had grown increasingly strange since then. Concerned about potential imposters, the guards prepared to move but quickly passed them by, ready to confront whatever threat awaited. The guards chose not to intervene as the chaos around the World Tree grew increasingly uncontrollable. Ishua felt a twinge of disappointment that his first visit to an elf village was hurried, especially since his intention had been to enjoy sightseeing. Upon reaching the village's center, they heard a familiar voice, Alan's, shout, "It's not his fault." A few days earlier, Alan had been summoned to the castle to report his recent accomplishments to the king. Yet, he was at a loss for words since events had been chaotic for him. He had returned from Nabish swiftly, summoned unexpectedly by the monarch. The prime minister was eager for impressive news from the hero they celebrated, especially after hero Lillian's triumph over one of the 4 heavenly demons. The officials hoped for a grand achievement report, but Alan merely mentioned that he had gained a few levels over recent days. When asked if that was all, he hesitated before revealing he was in the midst of conquering a ranked dungeon and planned to explore S-rank dungeons afterward. The king, however, dismissed such updates, expressing no interest in further dungeon reports. Instead, he wanted to hear a sincere account from Ishua. This annoyed Alan. Why was Ishua's name repeatedly brought up? He feared that if the king learned he was the only remaining member of his party, it would damage his standing. To cover up, he lied that Ishua was unwell, prompting the king to inquire about his health. Alan further claimed Arya was with Ishua, and he was simply resting. Desperate to improve his next report, Alan wanted to spin a better story. The king, understanding but still impatient, decided that an urgent mission awaited Alan. He instructed him to consider discussing this task with Ishua before proceeding. Receiving the assignment, Alan set out for the elf village and arrived at the Drazzle. His task was to investigate the increasing sightings of mutated monsters in the area around the village. He inquired about the situation from the coachman, asking if abnormal monsters had indeed been appearing recently. The man confirmed that many reports had been received, which led to the region's closure. Alan had heard that hero Lillian was already hunting the mutated creatures there, but he doubted her effectiveness. The coachman mentioned her reputation as a strong and beautiful woman, yet Alan thought of her as little more than a runt wielding a gorilla-like swordwoman companion. Confident he could resolve the issue himself and earn recognition, Alan decided to ignore the rumors, especially since he had not encountered any monsters himself. To him, they were simply exaggerated tales, and he was determined to handle things on his own. He believed his fortune was improving. If Ishua had been present at the gathering, he would have inadvertently gained notoriety without even trying. Upon reaching the elf village, Alan felt relieved that no monsters had blocked his path. The guard emphasized that entry was strictly forbidden without permission. Alan inquired if Lillian had been there recently. The elf guard, surprised, asked for his identity, and Alan showed his hero license, explaining he was on a royal mission to investigate the village. The guard had never heard of a lone hero, but Alan insisted it was accurate and requested to be admitted. At that moment, Queen Chelsea of Alves arrived and instructed the guard to let him in. Her striking beauty enthralled Alan instantly. Chelsea believed their troubles could no longer be hidden, and with no clear solution in sight, outside help might be necessary. She urged Alan to follow her, warning that if their situation worsened, it could threaten the entire world, and advised him to proceed cautiously. Alan wondered why she was telling him this, questioning whether the problem was truly so dire. Yet, remembering the king's expectation of a detailed report, he was eager to gather information himself. If it became overwhelming, he thought he could always retreat. Inside the village, villagers cast anxious, wary glances, clearly distressed or fearful, indicating the difficulty of the task ahead. Alan asked the queen if Lillian had arrived previously, to which she replied, Alan was the only recent visitor. This made Alan wonder if he should seek her out first, but then he saw an opportunity to handle the situation solo and prove his worth to the king. Soon, they reached the World Tree, an enormous and awe-inspiring sight up close. Alan observed that its roots appeared to be slowly decaying. The elves worked tirelessly to preserve it, but nothing seemed to halt the process. Chelsea confirmed that the vitality of the World Tree was waning. The spreading miasma was overpowering its life force. Recognizing the monster's increased ferocity, Alan realized the region might soon become uninhabitable. He immediately understood that the crisis exceeded his ability to control. When the Elf Queen asked if he could resolve this, Alan considered making an excuse to leave. He claimed he was merely here to investigate, but the stern expressions of the Prime Minister and King made him reconsider. Chelsea looked at him expectantly. Alan then assured her that he would handle the situation himself. Without hesitation, Alan stepped forward, accepting full responsibility to heal the World Tree, and even swearing on his pride as a hero. Now, he was committed to the task with no option but to see it through. Believing a touch of healing magic might suffice, he descended toward the ancient tree. The Elf Queen regarded him as dependable, and even the guardians of the World Tree couldn't prevent him from attempting his plan. Unknown to him, a separate elite team of Alves was dedicated solely to protecting and restoring the tree. Confident that his hero abilities and healing skills could handle the situation, Alan cast a resurrection spell, an advanced recovery magic capable of healing even grievous injuries. Until now, he had kept his proficiency with such magic secret, leaving healing tasks to Arya. However, nothing occurred. The elven observers dismissed his efforts as futile, asserting that such a spell would never succeed in this context. Alan insisted he was merely preparing, then unleashed a series of healing and anti-poison spells, all to no avail. The elves started doubting the hype around the hero. They muttered that if those powers were sufficient, they could have dealt with the crisis themselves long ago. Frustration and desperation overwhelmed Alan. Failing to achieve results was unthinkable, especially with the looming threat of losing his hero status if he reported nothing. Then, he noticed a particular root of the World Tree that seemed discolored and abnormal, as if some malignant substance had accumulated there. Gripping his blade, Alan believed he had finally identified the core issue. He vowed to prove himself as a true hero. Queen Chelsea, alarmed, asked what he intended to do. Ignoring her, Alan strode toward the swollen root, drawing his holy sword. He claimed it was time to cut out the corrupted section. Chelsea shouted in alarm, worried he had lost his mind to attack the sacred tree. Alan, however, saw it differently. He believed removing the overgrown root was necessary, as it was clearly the source of the infestation. He swung his sword and severed the diseased part of the root. Yet, almost immediately, a dark aura, an insidious miasma, began spreading rapidly through the tree. Panic gripped Alan as he watched the transformation. The queen's face turned pale with despair, realizing that the roots were the tree's natural defense mechanism. The uprooted section Alan cut was likely the last barrier against the harmful miasma. Horrified, Alan understood he had made a terrible mistake. His reckless action had unleashed catastrophe. The elves, furious, accused him of collaborating with the demon lord, perceiving his deed as treachery. Alan tried to defend himself, insisting he had no intention to harm the tree and that he simply acted without knowledge of the full situation. Suddenly, a voice called his name, a voice he would never forget, as he shouted in confusion and anger, "Ishua, why the hell are you here?" Ishua turned to ask what had been done to the world tree. The elves explained that Hero Alan had cut the root sealing the miasma, causing the crisis. Curious, Ishua swiftly descended to examine the scene firsthand, while the elf queen inquired of Lillian about their identities. Lillian introduced herself as the hero Lillian and confirmed she was already acquainted with Queen Chelsea. Chelsea lamented that she had once been the ruling queen of the elves until the world tree began to wither. She declared that, after such shameful events, she no longer merited her throne. But Lillian reassured her that despair was premature. Seeking clarity, Ishua approached the world tree and sensed its soul within. He announced to everyone that the ancient being was still alive and that he would attempt to heal it. The elf queen became hopeful upon hearing this, though some elves remained mistrustful of humans after past betrayals. Lillian calmed their fears, pointing out that Ishua was still an inexperienced adventurer, a mere mana-porter in present terms. Yet, as a hero herself, she confidently believed he could eventually succeed in saving the world. Her words resonated with the elf queen, whose trusting gaze fixed on Ishua, filled with newfound hope. Chelsea stepped aside, allowing Ishua to proceed, expressing her willingness to trust his efforts. Nonetheless, she acknowledged that if nothing changed, the world tree's fate was sealed. Simultaneously, she ordered the arrest of Alan, who had attempted to slay the world tree. He proclaimed himself Ishua's leader, but no one believed his claims and they moved to detain him. Meanwhile, Ishua prepared to heal the ancient guardian, acutely aware of the great responsibility resting on his shoulders. He began channeling sacred mana into the tree, aiming to nullify the miasma with holy attributes. Recognizing that the severed root also required restoration, he cast a mana hole spell into the air. The elves watched, puzzled by the strange distortions forming in the magic circle. In an instant, the magic circle started extracting the miasma. Ishua explained that his created mana hole functioned like a siphon, drawing out harmful substances from the tree. He continued summoning additional mana holes around the massive plant, while instructing Lillian to set more of these circles in areas where the miasma was thickest within the tree's trunk. She readily obeyed, leveraging her magic to levitate and cast multiple intricate circles as she drew mana from Ishua. Their combined effort gradually improved the situation, and signs of recovery appeared. Chelsea, unfamiliar with such methods, questioned what kind of person Ishua truly was. Ishua modestly replied he was simply a mana porter, then urged Lillian to keep deploying the mana holes. Suddenly, a guard elf rushed in, shouting that the situation outside was deteriorating. Their village was being overwhelmed by hundreds of monsters out of nowhere. The elf queen was distressed to hear of the chaos, especially during this critical moment when the world tree's health was still fragile. Since the world tree could not purify her asthma under the current circumstances, Lillian sensed that the monsters had become increasingly aggressive. Ishua was unable to leave his post because he needed to stay and tend to the world tree, and the same applied to Lillian herself. Meanwhile, Diana felt relieved to be able to contribute, as she had been worried about her usefulness in this crisis. Ishua delegated responsibility to Diana and Arya, instructing them to hold the line outside the village gates and keep the monsters at bay, while he and Lillian focused on healing the world tree. When Diana and Arya reached the village entrance, she warned everyone, including the elf guards, that no monsters must pass this point. She steeled herself for the difficult task ahead, knowing it would be her first time fighting alongside Saint Arya, and that the situation was perilous even for their formidable team. One by one, more monsters emerged from the forest. Diana ordered the archers to handle the weakest enemies along the sides while she and Arya faced the large swarm moving along the main road. Arya cast a holy nova, eliminating several monsters simultaneously, which made Diana admire her incredible power. Simultaneously, the elves brought mana recovery potions, enabling Arya to sustain her efforts for a longer duration. Arya then cast protective buffs on Diana, who immediately charged into battle, eager to fulfill her role. Diana's raw strength proved highly effective against the overwhelming number of foes, and her and Arya's cooperation successfully kept the monsters at bay. Their teamwork amazed the elf guards, who acknowledged the fighter's strength, yet wondered how long they could withstand the relentless assault of hundreds of monsters. Meanwhile, Ishua and Lillian continuously cast mana hole spells, and their efforts brought them closer to completing the ritual to heal the world tree. Diana was slightly injured when a small monster attacked her from her blind spot, but Arya quickly cast healing magic, and she was soon back in the fray. Despite exhaustion, they pressed on, fighting tirelessly. Soon, their mana potions ran out. The air thickened with the spread of the miasma, yet as the elves continued to defend the boundaries with unwavering dedication, Diana knew she could not afford to relax or complain. They had to persevere until the world tree's health was restored. At the same time, a guard reported to the queen that the monsters would likely breach the village gates soon. Citizens were already being evacuated, but given the expanding threat, the monsters were sure to reach before the world tree was fully cured. The queen ordered all capable fighters to head immediately to the gates, even promising to join the combat herself if necessary, armed with a bow. Ishua confirmed that the miasma's influence on the asthma had finally been lifted, and mana was beginning to flow back into the world tree. He knew he only had to hold on a little longer. Meanwhile, Diana's strength was waning as her left leg, pierced by a monster's attack, slowed her down. Arya was ready to cast healing magic at any moment, but even she was nearing exhaustion, with her mana almost depleted. Sensing this, Diana ordered Arya to withdraw, even if it meant fighting alone at the front against hundreds of monsters. She glanced around and quickly realized that their situation was far from favorable. It felt like the worst day of her life. She couldn't believe that even she, the Sword Saint, might have to prepare for death twice within a single day. Determined, she resolved that if they survived this ordeal, she would dedicate herself to even more rigorous training to avoid such desperation again. At that moment, her attention was caught by two figures leaping from the sky, landing amid the horde of monsters. Recognizing them, she saw it was the magic swordswoman Thaya and the sage Ritter, wielding formidable magical attacks. Their sudden arrival changed the tide of battle at the perfect moment. Arya felt relief seeing her former comrades join the fight, hopeful that the odds would now shift in their favor. A few weeks earlier, after parting ways with Alan's party, Thaya and Ritter had set out to forge their own path toward meeting Ishua. Leaving Alan behind, they eagerly anticipated their reunion with the mage. Their journey was interrupted, however, when they encountered a distress signal and found themselves ambushed by monsters. Without hesitation, Thaya and Ritter decided to assist those in peril, despite risking delay in their plans to meet Ishua. They knew that if it was Ishua, he would help others in need too, and they also wished to release some of their recent frustrations in this conflict. After rescuing the humans, Ritter and Thaya found themselves inadvertently following them, heading away from Bish Town. Although their original goal was elsewhere, they couldn't abandon defenseless people whose escorts had been slain. Thaya planned to ensure their safe departure before heading to Nabish Town. Instead of continuing on their intended route, they unexpectedly found themselves in the opulent mansion of a noble. The host offered them hospitality, grateful for saving his daughter, who owed her rescue to the medicine carried in the carriage they protected. Ritter urged Thaya that they should leave immediately, but the noble insisted they stay overnight to properly thank them. Despite their polite refusals, the noble persisted, urging them not to refuse his gratitude, fearing shame if he let them depart without expressing his thanks. Wanting to avoid hurting his feelings, Thaya and Ritter agreed to stay for the night. However, Ritter was perplexed. How could they end up staying a whole week? The noble kept pleading for them to extend their stay, with each night more insistent than the last. Thaya, eager to continue their journey to Nbish, was already eager to depart, but the noble's persistent hospitality made it difficult to leave immediately. Rauru had been monitoring Ishua's presence in Nabish for some time, recognizing that their vigilance could no longer be relaxed. Early the following morning, they immediately set out to locate him. However, upon reaching Nabish town, they discovered Ishua was nowhere to be found, leading them to believe they might have arrived too late. The town's receptionist informed them that Ishua had recently departed for the elf village to undertake a special quest assigned by the guild. Mthaya was eager to pursue Ishua without delay, but the receptionist intervened, explaining that the king had recently issued a strict ban on anyone entering the area surrounding the village. Ritter understood that royal commands carried weight and that they had no choice but to comply. Yet, Mthaya was reluctant to wait. Since Ishua had completed all remaining quests himself, she resolved to undertake them in his absence, determined to help those in need and honor his legacy. They took on various side quests, ranged from eliminating undead, locating lost pets, to caring for and transporting creatures. Their efforts earned them recognition as dedicated huntresses for leftover assignments. Mthaya's deepest wish was to earn Ishua's praise upon his return. Unexpectedly, their adventure took a strange turn when they found themselves being carried away by a massive bird. Ritu woke Mthaya, who had dozed out of boredom, and together they questioned Ritter about the bizarre situation. Ritter explained that they had been sleeping too long and that the bird had attacked them. Now, it appeared to be guiding them toward its nest, planning to feed them to its chicks. Mthaya refused to become bird chick food and secretly plotted her escape once they neared the ground. Rauru speculated that the bird's destination was likely the elf village, where Ishua was presently located. Ritter justified the situation, claiming that the king's order did not apply when they were carried by the bird and thus was beyond their control. With that, they pretended to be helpless passengers, resigned to their unusual fate. Mthaya surmised that a creature of this size would probably have a nest near the World Tree. As they approached the elf village, Ritter noted that the condition of the World Tree appeared dire. Upon arrival, they saw Diana and Arya fighting a horde of monsters alone. Mthaya, with her superior skills, effortlessly subdued the monsters and slowed their advance significantly. Meanwhile, Ritter was combining physical and magical attacks to clear her side of the battlefield. Arya observed that both women had improved their combat abilities while conserving mana. Diana, on her part, was puzzled why Hero Allen had banished such talented individuals. Ritter offered Arya a mana potion, enabling her to recover and rejoin the fight, making her less of a burden. Diana's impressive swordsmanship astonished Mthaya, and soon afterward, Lillian arrived, announcing herself dramatically while unleashing a barrage of fireballs upon the monsters, creating her own heroic scene. The villagers felt relief as additional help arrived, and for the first time, Mthaya witnessed hero Lillian in person. She had heard of Lillian's reputation as the hero who had defeated one of the 4 heavenly demons. Lillian explained that they had completed the setup of the mana holes, with Ishua now responsible for managing the remaining task of neutralizing the miasma. The group appeared stronger than before. What once consisted of just Arya and Diana now included 5 members who believed wholeheartedly in Ishua's ability to handle the situation without fail. Lillian remembered the moment she finished establishing the mana holes, after which Ishua took control, and gradually, the elves observed that the World Tree seemed to shed fewer leaves. Ishua was pleased that they had halted the erosion caused by the miasma. He then instructed Lillian to assist the others, while he focused on pouring holy attribute mana into the World Tree to restore its vital circulatory functions. The elves marveled at how a human could manage so many magic circles simultaneously and infuse his own mana into the World Tree, an ability beyond even the Queen's own capacity. Ishua alone took charge of maintaining the entire circulation system, which amazed everyone. Her Majesty resolved to remember his name, recognizing that he had accomplished what seemed impossible. Ishua concentrated on restoring the mana flow within the World Tree. Gradually, the massive tree began to recover. The shedding of leaves completely ceased, and fresh foliage sprouted quickly across its branches. This signaled that the tree's regenerative powers had returned, and it was regaining full vitality. Chelsea was overwhelmed with emotion, tears streaming down her face as she watched the World Tree breathe easy once again. Meanwhile, outside the village, Diana and her companions fought relentlessly against incoming monsters. They sensed the miasma weakening and the tree returning to normal function, which meant the purification process was succeeding. They estimated only a few more moments of fighting remained. Unexpectedly, the monsters halted their advance as if commanded to do so. Mythia found this baffling. The creatures then turned around and resumed their retreat, as if their mission had failed. Ritteru suggested that the monsters had weakened due to the renewed purification, leaving the village safe. Cheers erupted among the defenders, who believed they had achieved an unlikely victory. Their admiration for Ishua deepened, recognizing his pivotal role in turning the tide. Meanwhile, the Elven Queen struggled to find words to express her gratitude. Ishua revealed that one final step was needed before their safety was fully assured. He poured an enormous amount of mana into a magic circle and cast it over the entire world tree, ensuring that the threat could never return. When asked what he had done, Ishua explained that he had infused the tree with a storehouse of light magic, designed to guarantee the continuous function of its purification, a safeguard against future fallbacks. Chelsea never expected Ishua would go to such lengths for their cause. At that very moment, everyone else returned from the gates, summoning Ishua's name. Arya immediately rushed to embrace him, celebrating their success. Ishua expressed his gratitude, especially to Lillian and Diana, for their unwavering support. To his surprise, Mthaya and Ritter were also present, having arrived unexpectedly. Mthaya embraced him warmly, remarking that it had been ages since they last met. He hadn't imagined two others would come to aid him as well. Mthaya responded that their loyalty was evident, always ready to stand by Ishua's side. However, Ritter revealed they were coincidentally brought here by a bird, prompting Chelsea to call out Ishua as a true savior descending upon the elven village. She praised not only him but also the others who had contributed to saving the village and the world tree. She called their group a formidable party, though Ishua modestly clarified they had merely been nearby at the right moment. Chelsea insisted they looked like a coordinated team, as if working together for years, and decided to host a festival to honor their efforts properly. That very night, a celebration erupted, filled with lively music and the aroma of elf village delicacies. Some guests danced, while others indulged in the feast. Chelsea remarked that even without Alan's devastating strike against the world tree, he was destined to perish in that way, making their survival seem miraculous. She could barely fathom the weight of her responsibilities as queen, and she promised to aid Ishua in any way she could. Respectfully, Ishua told her that her hosting this festival was already enough, revealing he saw her selflessness clearly. Just then, a familiar voice startled Ishua. It was Arya, drunken and loud. He hadn't noticed her drinking earlier, but now she drew attention with her inebriated antics. Though she was acting unlike a saint, Arya confidently claimed that a saint could purify drunkenness if she wished. Ishua asked her why she didn't sober up, but she ignored the question, instead urging him to share a drink and getting uncomfortably close. He gently tried to tell her to back off, only to notice another voice shouting. It was Lillian, sobbing because her feelings hadn't been reciprocated by Ishua. Diana interjected, asking who had supplied Lillian with alcohol, which seemed to break her composure entirely. Feeling out of character, Lillian fluttered around holding a drink and lamenting her status as a hero disliked by many. Diana attempted to calm her, but Lillian kept circling the crowd in her drunken state. Meanwhile, Ishua caught sight of them and understood the familiar struggle of watching over their intoxicated friends. Both he and Diana shared that silent, understanding expression. The festivities brought genuine joy to everyone, as they temporarily set aside their serious roles and let loose until exhaustion claimed them and they fell asleep. The following day, Ishua prepared to depart. They had also taken Alan with them, though he was confined in a cage because of his crimes here. Alan demanded his freedom, but the elves refused, fearing they would report him to the king. Mythia wished they could simply discard the cage, perhaps even break Alan's leg to prevent him from causing trouble. Ishua, however, calmly explained that they needed to report everything to the king, so Alan would have to stay quiet. Their route would first take them to Banished town, then onward to the royal capital. The elf queen expressed her gratitude for their help and hoped they would visit again soon. Ishua also thanked the queen for the festival, expressing a desire to return shortly. For now, they set off on their journey back to Banished town. Upon arrival, Ishua headed straight to the Adventurers Guild. The receptionist was pleased to see he was safe and happy to be reunited with the others, especially since concerns had arisen during the chaos at the elf village. Ishua reassured her that they were now secure and offered to report on the recent quest. He recounted everything that transpired during his stay. It shocked her to hear that the world tree was nearly destroyed. Because of this, they not only faced an S-rank monster but also succeeded in reviving the ancient guardian. The receptionist appreciated Ishua's extraordinary efforts, yet she found the events hard to believe. She questioned his true identity, suspecting there might be more to him than a simple monster porter. Ishua insisted he was just an ordinary porter, but everyone behind him shook their heads in disapproval. The receptionist explained they wanted to show gratitude through this quest, but given the dangers faced, they believed the reward should be increased. Ishua declined, insisting 30 gold coins, already a generous sum, were enough. The receptionist found it hard to believe such modest humility, while Arya worried that Ishua genuinely thought he had done nothing special. She marked the quest as completed and also finalized Lillian's mission. She was pleased to hear that the rising heroine Lillian had teamed up with Ishua, an SSS-ranked monster porter, and wished she could have witnessed the alliance. Suddenly, loud shouting erupted outside, drawing her attention. She was reluctant to deal with Alan, who clearly did not deserve the title of hero. Alan called out to the group he considered his. His companions reminded him that he was the one who had banished them, and the other adventurers grew angry, asking if he wanted to cause a conflict with the elves. Ishua considered that Alan should have been kept outside the city gates to avoid such insults. Mythia, however, wanted Alan to feel even worse, especially after he nearly abandoned her to die in a high-ranked dungeon. Ishua clearly harbored resentment against Alan. He remarked that it was high time they headed to the royal capital to report everything to the king. Upon arrival at the palace, the monarch welcomed them back with relief, having already heard details from the emissary of the 11th queen. The king was puzzled as to why Alan had ventured ahead alone and worsened the situation. Alan remained silent in response. Arya then explained that Alan had expelled Ishua from the party, which led her and the others to leave as well, doubting his leadership. The king's expression hardened with anger at that revelation, and Alan quickly told Arya to be quiet. Yet, the king demanded Alan stay silent and turned to Ishua, asking if the account was accurate. Ishua confirmed, and Alan dismissively remarked that the party didn't need members who only supplied mana. The king countered, pointing out that holy swords demanded significant mana consumption, which was why Ishua was included in the team to help cover those costs. Mythia added that Alan had tried to conquer a dungeon with 3 companions and abandoned her to die alone within it. The king, realizing enough, understood that Alan had already been alone when he was assigned to investigate the elf village. At that time, Alan lied to him, but his deception was no longer plausible. The prime minister then formally declared that Alan was being stripped of his status as a hero. Alan begged the king for another chance, insisting he could make a triumphant comeback. He asked for Ishua and the others to rejoin his party and start anew. However, they had lost their trust. Arya challenged Alan, stating that if he truly deserved to be called a hero, he should restart his journey as an adventurer and prove himself quickly. Others sensed that Arya was not speaking entirely as a saint. Alan, meanwhile, strongly disliked the suggestion. The king agreed, noting that Alan had made no progress since his initial hero status and had nearly caused a crisis in their relations with the elves. Furthermore, Alan's attempt to flee despite his duty to report the incident sealed his fate. As punishment, the king ordered Alan to be branded with a mark symbolizing his status as a criminal, a scar that would stay with him forever. Alan protested vehemently, declaring that he refused to be called a criminal, calling it absurd. Nonetheless, soldiers moved to brand him, stripping him of his dignity. Later, the king approached Ishua, who had handled the situation admirably, and asked if there was anything he wished. Ishua modestly declined, claiming he had already received enough reward from the guild. The prime minister then suggested granting Ishua a domain and a noble title. The king approved, but Ishua hesitated, feeling that rising to aristocracy was too much for him as a commoner. Arya told him that such a promotion was a significant achievement for someone of humble origins. But Ishua declined again, saying he was satisfied with the recognition he already received. All at once, his decision took everyone by surprise, yet he maintained that it was truly an honor to be recognized so highly by the king. However, as an adventurer driven by a yearning for greater achievements, he longed to forge ahead. His greatest desire at that moment was to journey alongside his companions more than anything else. The king, respecting his sentiments, wished Ishua the very best on his forthcoming expeditions. Diana then shifted her attention to Lillian, asking what her next move would be. Did she prefer to travel again solely with the two of them, or was she considering forming a party with Ishua now? For Lillian, this moment represented her chance to finally join Ishua's group. Hesitantly, she called out to him, but before her voice could reach him, Thaya stepped forward and requested that Ishua include her and Raru in his party. Lillian's opportunity faded, as Ishua questioned whether they truly wanted to join him and Arya, given their impressive skills that would allow them to join any party they pleased. However, Thaya and Rataru trusted Ishua more than anyone else and enjoyed their time with him. Ishua reassured them that they might be overestimating their importance and expressed that he would be happy to have them aboard nonetheless. Diana then encouraged Lillian to speak up as well, prompting her to ask Ishua directly to include her in his party. This request caught everyone about Ishua and the others by surprise. Diana noted that Lillian's plead sounded like that of a child asking to play. Ishua questioned whether Lillian truly wanted that, pointing out her impressive feat of defeating one of the 4 heavenly demons by herself. If she was capable of such a feat, she should be able to assemble her own party instead. Diana responded, reminding him that at the elf village, their efforts alone wouldn't have sufficed, and they depended on skilled allies like them to progress, resources that were not easy to find. She then looked to Arya for her opinion. Arya trusted Lillian's heroism and saw her as a remarkable individual, unlike Alan, and wished to travel with her as well. After considering the circumstances, Ishua approached Lillian and asked her to include him and his companions in her party. Lillian was taken aback. Her wish had been the opposite, to join his team. Nonetheless, Ishua wanted to honor the hero who deserved to lead the party unconditionally. Nervous, Lillian asked Diana what she should do. Diana advised that if that was Ishua's wish, they should accept it, since they would be traveling together regardless. With their party now formed, Ishua proceeded to memorize everyone's names and roles, officially establishing a new hero team set to confront the Demon Lord. Meanwhile, within the Demon Lord's castle, Ifrit suggested they should have advanced at the forefront of the swarm. Undine, another of the 4 heavenly demons, countered that had they gone there, she'd have been defeated once again by the hero Lillian. Ifrit teased her, implying her plan wasn't as flawless as she thought and that failure was not entirely impossible this time. Lastly, Sylphie, a small, butterfly-like demon, remarked that sending Mimas to the elf village to annihilate it wasn't a bad strategy in itself. The 4th demon gnome believed his mutated ogre king should have been powerful enough to defeat the little hero. Yet, the 4 of them recognized a harsh truth. Their greatest threat was not the hero himself but Ishua, whose cheat-like abilities made him nearly unstoppable. The Demon Lord then questioned whether a human could truly possess such immense mana reserves. Undine confirmed that Ishua's vast mana pools, combined with his exceptional control, were indeed terrifying. Matters grew more complicated now that he had allied with hero Lillian. Ifrit pointed out that they had no choice but to face him directly, abandoning their usual tricks, and the Demon Lord concurred. They waited as the Demon Lord considered his decision. Finally, he declared that henceforth, their approach would be head-on, but not by wasting strength on futile tactics. Instead, they would pit a fellow human hero against Ishua. Undine expressed doubt about finding a human willing to cooperate with demons, but the Demon Lord already had someone in mind, Alan. The hero was currently struggling to survive and find quests after receiving a criminal mark. Alan harbored deep hatred for Ishua, blaming him for all his misfortunes. Now, the demon lord intended to sway the fallen hero to their side. Meanwhile, Ishua and the others were traveling in a carriage. Lillian calmly informed him they were approaching AMD's territory. Ishua suggested they speak informally now that they were officially in the same party. Lillian, unused to such familiarity, hesitated. He then tried to adopt the same casual tone with Mthaya and Ritaru, who still addressed him politely. It had been a week since the new party was formed, and their current mission was to deliver white elixir to Amdia's land. Lord Amdia was the same noble Mthaya and Ritaru had encountered earlier, and she mentioned they had previously assisted a carriage transporting the same elixir. Later, they escorted the carriage to the Lord's estate. Upon arriving, they found the inhabitants suffering from an unknown disease. It was the Lord's daughter and some servants who appeared most affected. The greater amount of elixir required suggested an increase in sick individuals, which concerned Ishua deeply. He urged the coachman to hurry, and Diana, walking outside for safety, informed them when they reached the mansion. The Lord himself came to greet them at the entrance, expressing happiness to see Mthaya and Ritaru again. Mthaya was surprised by their quick return but was relieved to see the girl doing well. Still, the ongoing need for large quantities of elixir indicated a wider outbreak. Amdia explained that strange illnesses had become widespread across his land, baffling his doctors. The only remedy that seemed effective was the highest-ranked healing potion, the white elixir. Ritaru now understood the reason behind the recent surge in quests for gathering Ringer's herbs. Ishua had assured Lord Amdia that they would collect additional herbs and elixirs from nearby territories and deliver them promptly. However, Lillian doubted that such measures would truly resolve the problem. Listening carefully, Ishua agreed when she requested that Lord Amdia allow them to investigate the strange illness further. Lord Amdia had not initially considered seeking aid for this mysterious disease, but Lillian later apologized for diverting their main task of delivering elixirs into such an investigation. Ishua was unbothered and believed they might uncover the disease's cause during their journey to supply more villages. He admitted he had not previously thought about probing its origin and appreciated Lillian's initiative. Trusting her judgment, he regarded her as a true hero in that moment. Lillian felt touched by his confidence, but he then asked her to simply call him Ishua in a more informal manner. She explained that such familiarity was impossible for now. Arya then inquired why she was so eager to investigate this illness from the start. Lillian explained that after defeating Ifrit, he had hinted that Unine harbored a sinister scheme which could threaten mankind. This revelation surprised her, as Ifrit had nearly disclosed plans to flood the world tree with monsters and annihilate the elven village. Yet, on the verge of revealing everything, Ifrit had suddenly fallen silent and fled using a teleportation spell. Unaware of the danger they had narrowly escaped, Ishua, Arya, and Lillian grew increasingly worried that a catastrophe was unfolding. Soon, they reached another village, where Lillian directed the team to begin unloading supplies. The coachman regarded them as an odd group, suspecting that, instead of simply completing their quest, they sought to investigate the disease source prematurely, risking delaying the reward for their transport. Mthaya remarked that such a strategy was clever, prompting Ishua to advise her against thinking cynically. She quickly claimed she was joking, prompting Ishua to comment that it was reassuring to see they had a leader with good intentions, more perceptive than his own. As they began distributing the elixirs and probing the outbreak's route, the village's healer informed them that the patients were being kept in a hastily built hut. When they arrived, many of the afflicted lay in pain, their faces twisted in suffering. The team was alarmed by the sheer number of patients. The healer explained that similar huts housed even more, around 100 individuals in total. Since the cause remained unknown, they could only rely on healing magic and leave the rest to the patients' immune systems. For now, they were grateful to have the white elixir, a reliable cure for this mysterious illness. Despite the scarcity of supplies, the available resources proved insufficient to treat all those in need. Ishua hesitated, feeling this challenge was beyond his expertise, but he was determined to contribute in some way, inspired by Lillian's example in seeking answers. He asked for permission to examine the patients, and the doctor was more than willing. Honored to assist a hero who had defeated one of the 4 heavenly demons and a monoporter credited with saving the world tree, Ishua approached a patient and gently touched his forehead to assess his condition. After careful observation, he noticed an anomaly and announced that the patient's mana balance was disrupted, causing his illness. The doctor was uncertain about this explanation, so Ishua clarified that the patient's dark mana level was dangerously low. Every individual is born with a foundational mana equilibrium, comprising minor amounts of each attribute. When one attribute becomes imbalanced, it can lead to sickness. The doctor was astonished. Ishua could sense mana flow with remarkable sensitivity just from physical contact. He then proposed that he might be able to restore the mana balance. After a brief moment, the patient's condition improved dramatically, as if he had never been unwell. The mother of the patient was overjoyed to see her son restored, and the doctor remembered that a white elixir was known to correct mana imbalances. Ishua went on to examine other patients, and they exhibited identical symptoms. The physician had never heard of anyone capable of transferring not only mana but of manipulating all attributes at will. Ishua decided to assist each patient individually, while Arya employed healing magic to ease their pain. Her spells enveloped the entire building, and the doctor witnessed astonishing transformations unfolding before his eyes. Meanwhile, Ritter began preparing more elixir, and Lillian undertook investigations within the village, focusing on the villagers' specific deficiency in dark mana. Diana and Mthaya approached the residents to gather advice. Ishua was pleased to see everyone stepping into their roles, diligently contributing to the effort. After some time, the village chief, working alongside the staff, approached Ishua as he emerged from a hut. Inquiring about the situation and any new findings, Ishua replied that the main issue was not just the sickness, but that even those newly recovered wished to help. Arya expressed relief, feeling their symptoms had abated. The villagers regarded this as a genuine miracle, cheering loudly in Ishua's name, unable to believe they were witnessing the birth of a new legend. Ishua humbly dismissed their praise, insisting that their collective effort was responsible for the success. At that moment, Lillian returned with critical news she had uncovered during her investigation. Her discovery sparked renewed hope among the villagers, who now began to view Ishua as their leader. Ishua observed that Lillian was the leader, and he noticed among the crowd cheering for them that some members of their own group were present. Meanwhile, outside the village, a group of individuals with criminal marks on their faces was preparing for a sinister scheme. They instructed the newcomer to carry out his first task without fail, to sell fake medicines to the suffering villagers. The newcomer questioned their motives, realizing these medicines were counterfeit with severe side effects. The criminals told him to accept his new life as a criminal, revealing that the newcomer was actually Alan, once a celebrated hero. After being branded a criminal, Alan attempted to take on quests in the nearby town, but was denied even the simplest, lowest-ranked assignments. The town's receptionist made it clear that he could only accept leftover quests due to the criminal mark branded on him. Frustrated, Alan cursed his circumstances, knowing he wouldn't even afford a night's stay at the inn. At that moment, a criminal approached him, calling him a former hero. Alan demanded to know who he was, but the criminal dismissed the question and offered him a quest seen as suitable. Recognizing these men as members of the local criminal guild, Alan demanded they leave him alone. He refused to sink so low as to join their ranks. Despite this, they offered him tempting food, and hungry as he was, Alan couldn't resist. He declared he would decide whether to accept the quest after he finished eating. While aboard the carriage, he listened to their explanation, and the criminal then asked him to eat outside, as he was assigned to protect the cargo. Hastily finishing his meal, Alan stepped out, once again lamenting his situation, forced to work with criminals. He convinced himself it was only a one-time matter, planning to reconsider his life once he earned some money from the job. He inquired about the cargo, learning it was medicine intended for sale in a village afflicted by disease, aimed at profiting from their distress. Initially, Alan thought it was an honest job until the criminal revealed the truth. These were Phoenix pills, renowned for their incredible effects immediately after use, giving a false sense of health. However, the pills caused mental instability and severe headaches after a time. Possession and distribution of such medicine were criminal offenses in the kingdom. Alan was disturbed to realize he was aiding in transporting such contraband. His last remaining sense of morality urged him to abandon the quest, but the criminals reminded him that he had already eaten well and knew their plan. They warned him that leaving now was impossible, as they intended to sell the drugs and move on before the side effects manifest fully. Alan could sense the danger escalating, understanding that any escape could cost him dearly. Alan recognized their true nature as corrupt scoundrels and refused to imitate their morals. Yet, when they approached the village, they assigned him the task of selling medicines there. Reluctantly, Alan traveled to the settlement, claiming to offer remedies from the royal capital capable of curing any disease. One villager listened quietly, prompting Alan to wonder inwardly, would anyone really believe such a dubious boast? Surprisingly, the villager regarded him with admiration, convinced there was such a healing potion from the royal court and that Alan had gone to great lengths to deliver it. The villager then led him into the village, and Alan was astonished that his ploy seemed to succeed. Inside, a crowd was gathered in the village square, and a sinking feeling crept over him. The villager explained that a group of heroes had recently visited and healed everyone, a pattern Alan was beginning to notice. As usual, in the midst of such events, Ishua's presence loomed prominently. The villagers showed him respect, and naturally, more women gathered around him, as was expected. If Ishua continued to garner such fame, Alan knew he would surely be celebrated forever. Meanwhile, Alan, branded a criminal, had been forced to peddle counterfeit medicines. Raising his hand, Alan announced he had a remedy that was far more affordable than the white dew elixir. Ishua instantly recognized the medicine and inquired about its origin. The village doctor looked to the sage for clarification, and Alan's heart sank. She was highly knowledgeable about medicines, and he feared she would identify it immediately. Ritter declared that it was a phoenix pill, a dangerous substance with severe side effects, and possessing even a single dose was in itself a crime. Alan felt the worst was imminent. The next moments brought surprise when Ishua reacted with incredulity, questioning why Alan involved himself in such illicit dealings. Lillian could no longer ignore the situation. As a hero, she saw it as her duty to intervene. Seizing a young girl nearby as a hostage, Alan shouted, "All of this is because of that monoporter," Ishua yelled, protesting his actions. However, Alan commanded everyone to keep their distance if they wanted to keep the girl safe. Lillian responded with disdain, criticizing the fallen hero-turned-criminal. She then cast her fantasy magic, trapping Alan within her imaginary realm. Caught off guard, Alan realized he had lost sight of the girl he held hostage. Frustrated, he shouted in confusion. Lillian explained she had simply transported him into her mental space, making hostage-taking impossible. Alan implored them to listen first, but he understood quickly they wouldn't trust his words. Their eyes were filled with suspicion and hostility. He questioned whether they truly believed Alan would willingly join a criminal guild, yet the gap of mistrust only widened. Alan pleaded desperately for another chance, confident he would quickly ascend the ranks this time. Yet, the others continued to regard him with disappointment, which he despised intensely. Determined to prove himself, Alan decided to confront them wielding a sacred sword. Ishua, aware of the potential trouble, swiftly cast a protective barrier of Mona around them. Unexpectedly, Alan found himself trapped within a barrier-like enclosure and suddenly began experiencing severe headaches caused by the overwhelming concentration of mana around him. In the past, Ishua had attempted to train Alan in the art of managing such mana fields, but his lack of experience left him unable to withstand the dense magical environment, resulting in pain. In his distressed state, Alan was unable to take any action, prompting Ishua to prepare to drain all mana from his body to restore consciousness. Alan begged him to stop, but it was too late. He lost consciousness entirely. The soldiers were then summoned to transport Alan back to the royal capital. While Ishua and others worked on investigating the situation locally, the soldiers arrested Alan and took him away. Ishua felt a pang of sadness, mourning the fact that Alan was involved in illegal activities, marked by his criminal badge. He wondered whether Alan might face execution this time, deepening his sorrow. Arya assured him that it was not his fault. Diana then questioned Lillian about any clues she might have uncovered regarding the mysterious disease. Lillian explained that a cleverly concealed magic circle around the well was responsible for channeling dark mana. Ishua immediately warned everyone to stay away. Lillian added that similar magic circles existed not only in the well, but also scattered across other parts of the village. It became clear to Ishua that the entire incident and the outbreak of the disease had been deliberately orchestrated by someone with malicious intent. Meanwhile, the criminals observing Alan saw how easily he was captured during his first task. They questioned their client if this was all she required, and upon receiving her smirk, understood it to be a confirmation. Eager to claim their reward, they removed their cloaks, mistakenly believing she intended to pay with her body. Unbeknownst to them, she was a demon and swiftly eliminated them once they were no longer useful. She punished them with death for their failure. Following this, she pondered whether the former hero Alan, having endured so much suffering, might ultimately turn against humanity. The group then traveled to the source of the disease, arriving where the legendary Calamity Dragon was said to slumber. A week prior, Ishua's party had examined the magic circles and realized their presence extended to other villages and towns. Lillian observed that these phenomena seemed to target individuals with weak magical powers, raising questions about where the dark mana was accumulating. They speculated whether this was part of the Demon Lord's schemes, but Ishua decided it was safest to dispel all the magic circles simultaneously to protect everyone. They estimated that removing every magic circle in the region would require a significant amount of time. Ritter believed that a core mechanism must exist to control the stolen mana, and regardless of its purpose, it should be centralized in one location. Destroying this core could potentially resolve the situation swiftly and effectively. Ishua deduced that he could locate this central point using his mana-sensing abilities, which he enhanced with modifications to his magic circle. It was an unexpected feat, as even magic experts found it difficult to alter a magic circle while it was active. Ishua reasoned that doing so was necessary to prevent the perpetrators from realizing they were being traced backward. He explained the process in detail, but his companions couldn't grasp the technicalities. All they knew was that they trusted him. Carefully, Ishua began to channel small amounts of mana into the circle, feeling as if he himself were becoming the mana and could thus perceive its flow. He observed the mana converging at a single point where an immense concentration could be detected. This nexus was located near the mountains, in the region where water sources emerged. Requesting a map, Ishua quickly marked a cross to indicate a large cave at the mountain's base, where all the mana appeared to be gathering. Lillian was taken aback, recognizing the location from the legend of the white-scaled dragon, often called a disaster dragon, known for its devastating power. The legend portrayed it as an unimaginably destructive creature. Without delay, Ishua and his companions moved toward the site of the disaster dragon's cavern. Upon arrival, Ishua was struck by how neatly such an enormous store of mana was hidden. He sensed traps nearby and warned the group, grateful for his ability to detect danger. Mthaya recounted that the disaster dragon was a mythical beast believed to have laid waste to many realms, with heroes of old attempting to seal it away. Lillian mentioned that this chamber was originally classified as an A-rank dungeon. Historically, party explorers had once reached its depths and found the sleeping dragon, leading to the cave's entrance being sealed by a massive boulder. Now, it seemed that someone had deliberately removed the barrier, intentionally reopening the cave. Ishua felt reassured having a hero within the group who possessed knowledge of the nation's secrets, adding a layer of intrigue to their mission. Lillian pointed out that the dark mana flowing into the area strongly suggested someone was attempting to revive the disaster dragon. Reporting this to the king might bring the royal army swiftly, but by then, the dragon could already be awakened and dangerous. Faced with the urgent need to prevent the awakening of the catastrophic dragon, the group knew they had to act swiftly. Mythia, however, harbored doubts because the location was supposed to be within a high-level dungeon. She remembered her near-fatal experience in a ranked dungeon and was wary of encountering formidable monsters here. Soon, the team was ambushed, and Mythia took the lead as the vanguard, methodically clearing their path while the others followed closely behind. Remarkably, during their coordinated effort, Ishua observed that they didn't need to recover mana at all. Their teamwork allowed them to progress smoothly, conserving their magical resources with strategic precision. Ritter's attention was caught by two distinct mana trails ahead, clearly a trap designed to deceive intruders. Lillian stepped forward, activating her skill mapping, which granted her a limited but valuable glimpse of the surroundings. She advised the team to take the right path. Following her direction, Arya examined the map more closely, noticing strange dots on it. She asked about their significance, and Lillian explained that these marked the presence of objects or entities ahead. Inside, a foul smell filled the air, like rotting meat. They discovered that the deceased dragon's corpse was being used as a base for experiments by a group of shady figures. The dragon was clearly decaying, raising concerns about the danger that such a scene posed. Suddenly, the leader of the intruders shouted at Ishua and his team, accusing them of trespassing. Ishua was taken aback. These humans were engaging in such perilous activities despite their own kind. Lillian stepped forward, introducing herself and explaining she came here investigating a disease outbreak. The invaders recognized her as the hero who defeated their master, Ifrit. This revealed that the intruders were enemies of the Demon Lord, aligned with a dangerous cult. Mythia shouted that they were followers of the Demon Lord and members of the Chaos Divine Guide Society, a fanatic sect worshipping the demon and believing humanity's salvation lay in its destruction. Lillian demanded to know if they were acting under the Demon Lord's orders. The intruder replied that they had never met the Demon Lord directly, but believed that reviving the disaster dragon would earn their recognition from the demon itself. Ishua was incredulous. These cultists risked everything, even harming many innocents, just for a chance at acknowledgement. Now, they refused to let any hero stand in their way and launched an attack. In response, Lillian ordered her team to capture the intruders alive, emphasizing non-lethal force. Reminded that they had entered this place only after conquering the dungeon, they understood that retreat would not be easy. Suddenly, Mythia eliminated one of the enemies in less than a second, shattering their confidence and exposing the overwhelming strength of the others, leading to some cultists being captured immediately. The cult leader was stunned by how swiftly they were overwhelmed and quickly resorted to a desperate plan, reviving the incomplete disaster dragon. Lillian desperately tried to stop him, but the cultist forced his way through in his frantic attempt, risking his own life to bring the creature back. Suddenly, the entire ground began to tremble violently, and dark mana surged wildly around the dragon's body. Moments later, tremors spread through the area as the cultist succeeded in awakening the disaster dragon. Its terrifying eyes snapped open, and it unleashed a breath attack so powerful it pierced straight through the mountain itself. In that instant, Ishua and her companions felt as if they had been thrown outside the cave, though in reality, the ceiling had been obliterated in seconds by the dragon's breath. The scale of the danger became painfully clear. This beast was capable of annihilating entire territories and nations with a single breath, suggesting it was at least an S-rank monster. The cultists trembled before the realization of true catastrophe unfolding. As the disaster dragon roared and exuded a wave of intimidation, unexpectedly demolishing the cave ceiling, the team was stunned. They braced themselves, anticipating another devastating burst. Yet, in a sudden rush, the dragon's right arm was severed as it charged and unleashed its breath attack close to their position. The blast was so immense that it destroyed half a mountain dozens of kilometers away. Diana stared in horror at the destructive force before her eyes, thankful they had survived only because the dragon was still incomplete and unbalanced. Noticing the cultists nearby, Ishua instructed Lillian to isolate them and the dragon from the rest of the area. Using her magic, Lillian created a pocket of the fantasy world, containing only the Calamity Dragon and her party. Diana had never imagined she would face such a legendary beast, and now every movement was critical. One mistake could mean death. Lillian charged Diana's sword with immense power, and she delivered a clean, diagonal strike across the dragon's body. Ritaru followed immediately with her strongest lightning spell, hitting the creature directly. Mthaya unleashed her most potent attack, Grim Lancer, wielding her magic sword. Still, they wondered if any of their strikes made an impact. When the dust settled, Diana's eyes widened with shock. The dragon remained utterly unharmed. It was clear that this monster was far beyond their current strength. A true behemoth from legends, seemingly impervious to their efforts. Diana shielded others from the dragon's deadly claw, while the creature managed to fracture the surface of the fantasy realm. A moment Lillian had never witnessed before, and which demonstrated the dragon's incredible power. Ishua warned everyone that even a slight scratch from such a beast would mean instant death, and their attacks seemed utterly ineffective against it. Lillian desperately searched for a way to combat the formidable opponent. Then, Saint Arya unleashed her strongest move, a holy nova aimed directly at the dragon, surprisingly carving a hole into the creature's side. The spectators rejoiced, realizing they had found something that could potentially harm the calamity, which Ishua attributed to the stark contrast between Arya's holy light magic and the dragon's dark mana. However, Arya soon pointed out that the dragon was quickly regenerating the wound, complicating their efforts. Diana asked Ishua whether he could purify the dark mana as he had previous, but he hesitated, explaining that the sheer volume of dark mana within the beast made such an attempt impossible under current conditions. The threat of immediate death rendered close contact and attempt at purification futile. Despair set in, as it seemed all hope was lost, but Ishua remained optimistic. He suggested that if the dragon had fully recovered, their chances would be minimal, but since Arya's attacks had made some impact, there might yet be a way forward. Ishua then revealed a plan, one that was extremely risky and required complete trust from everyone. They accepted almost instantly, recognizing Ishua's leadership as the core of their party's strength. Moved by their confidence, Ishua resolved to do everything in his power. He instructed them to unleash their strongest magic attacks on him, an unexpected move that surprised all. With everyone agreeing, Ishua explained that this was part of his strategy. While they distracted the dragon, he intended to transform the essence of their magic spells. Arya hesitated briefly, asking if Ishua was certain. Upon his confirmation, Arya launched her Holy Nova. Ritaru charged a thunder spell, and Mthaya summoned her Grim Lancer, all directing their attacks at Ishua. He felt the tension, knowing that any one of those attacks could kill him instantly. Yet, he understood that his plan depended on transforming their magic's attributes, something he had never attempted before, but believed was possible. Ritaru, a sage, assured him that such a conversion was feasible, even if previously thought impractical due to low success rates. Ishua had recently devised a method to convert all magic into holy energy with a near-perfect efficiency, an astonishing claim given the disbelief surrounding such an achievement. He had engineered a new technique to turn everyone's magic into holy magic, aiming to make their strikes against the Calamity Dragon far more potent and effective. Realizing that failing to defeat the dragon in one swift strike could spell disaster, they understood their plan depended on immediate action. Ishua advised them that if he were to fall in battle, retreat was the only option until reinforcements from the king's army arrived. Arya, filled with fierce determination, rejected that idea outright, insisting that he not even consider dying. She knew how devastated she would be if anything happened to him. In the present, Ishua prepared to harness the power of Holy Nova, which required him first to dominate its essence. With a surge of magical insight, he rapidly analyzed Arya's Holy Nova attack, drawing on his familiarity with her techniques, and gained control of it. Next came Ritter's Thunder Assault. Although he was less acquainted with her lightning spell, it took a few seconds longer to grasp and master. Ritter marveled at Ishua's ability to transmute her lightning into a holy attribute, adding another element to his arsenal. Then came Mthaya's Cursed Sword Strike. He had long studied her blade but had never fully analyzed its cursed properties. Now he had to focus sharply to take control. Time grew dangerously short, and others watched anxiously as his moment of action approached. Recognizing the impending threat, Ishua knew he needed to deploy Mona Field, a magic barrier capable of slowing attacks, despite the risk that even a fraction of extra seconds might be the difference between victory and defeat. During that critical moment, he cast a desperate, unconventional spell in hopes of saving himself. Meanwhile, Arya, worriedly shouting Ishua's name, thought he was under attack by Grim Lancer. Yet, as the dust cleared, it became clear that Ishua had managed to analyze Grim Lancer's attack as well. Combining all three attacks into a single enchanted sphere, he stabilized the magic orb. Ritter observed that Ishua's Mona Field had been cast just in time. Ishua explained that Mona Field could bend the very fabric of space-time, creating a subspace where time slowed significantly, an ability no mage had wielded in centuries. Arya recalled that the last mage to manipulate time had lived hundreds of years ago. Now it was up to Ishua to unleash his ultimate magic attack. However, the Calamity Dragon immediately sensed the glowing sphere in Ishua's hand and turned aggressively toward him, recognizing the danger. They had to divert the beast's attention. Mthaya lunged from the side with her sword, while Diana aimed at the dragon's leg. Yet their strikes failed to land any damage. Seizing the moment, Arya unleashed Holy Nova to strike the dragon's left wing, drawing its gaze. Encouraged, she commanded him to proceed. Ishua fired a powered-up Holy Nova directly at the dragon, which responded by expelling a mighty breath of fire to counter the attack. Ritter warned that their efforts risked being rendered ineffective if the dragon's breath nullified their assault. Facing the grim possibility of failure, Ishua's mind raced. Yet, just when it seemed their attacks might be thwarted, he silently turned the tide by manipulating his magic power with precision, enchanting his sword St to harness and amplify their combined force. His mastery over space and time allowed him to reshape the battlefield, positioning his magic. An old memory surfaced, a lesson from a distant class, where a teacher had explained that certain phenomena defied normal human understanding. Among those was teleportation magic, once thought impossible for humans to master. Believing that only a select few could wield such power, Ishua, now confident in his mastery of magic control, decided to attempt it himself. He summoned a colossal mana field around him, denser than any he had conjured before. Within this concentrated space, he aimed to manipulate space itself, increasing the likelihood of bending reality. With great effort, Ishua succeeded in opening a rift and hurled himself into it. Momentarily disoriented, he found himself within a space-time anomaly, a realm where causality no longer held sway. The danger was clear. If he lost his way here, returning to his original world would be impossible. Focusing intently, Ishua visualized his destination, Arya. Driven by his unwavering desire to reach her, he concentrated with all his might, and somehow, he managed to find the exit. Outside, his friends watched anxiously, their hopes waning as the dragon's fiery breath scorched the area where Ishua had been. Lillian called his name desperately, searching for any sign of him, but no trace remained. Her heart sank with fear that they had lost him forever. Unexpectedly, Ishua reappeared behind Arya out of nowhere. He was momentarily dazed, suffering a headache, but upon seeing her safe and unharmed, relief washed over him. He explained that he had used her as a beacon, a marker to guide his teleportation. Arya, trembling with fear, disregarded his explanation and embraced him tightly, grateful just to see him alive. Meanwhile, Lillian watched in awe, her mind struggling to comprehend how he had survived such a catastrophic attack, as the dragon's breath had obliterated everything in its path. Ritter, observing the chaos, declared that only teleportation could explain Ishua's return. According to current magical theory, teleportation and temporal manipulation were linked, potentially interchangeable. He recalled that in ancient stories, only 100 heroes gathered together could achieve the feat of sealing such a beast. The fact that they had actually succeeded was even more astonishing. Isha responded calmly, explaining that the dragon wasn't entirely resurrected, but the king dismissed this, emphasizing that their victory had eradicated a great threat from the land for good. The prime minister then suggested they should carve a statue of Isha and his companions in the middle of the city square, and preparations for this were ordered immediately. To celebrate their achievement, the king declared a festival on that very day. During the festivities, Isha shifted focus and asked the king about someone important, someone who should have arrived by now. His question made the king and prime minister tense. Neither of them had good news. Concerned about what could have happened, Isha pressed for answers. The king then instructed a soldier to provide a report. When Isha received it, he learned that Alan had become a wanted man. He demanded an explanation, and the king recounted the entire story. Without delay, Isha went to the scene where the incident had occurred. He was appalled to discover that a monster stampede had taken place so close to the royal city. The soldier confirmed the report's authenticity, revealing that he had been among those escorting Alan. According to him, Alan had repeatedly tried to persuade the guards to set him free, insisting that he fake his death and escape. Alan argued that if news spread that a former hero had sided with the criminal guild, it would tarnish the reputation of all heroes, causing chaos. The soldier, James, refused to even consider releasing Alan. Suddenly, someone informed Captain James of something blocking their path ahead. As James looked forward, he saw a throng of monsters charging straight at them. Recognizing the danger, he ordered one of his men to rush back to the city and warn them. Meanwhile, he and his others prepared to hold off the advancing monsters. Alan found the entire situation perplexing. He thought it was an incredible stroke of bad luck that a monster outbreak occurred precisely when he was in custody. But then an idea struck him: this chaos might be his chance to escape. Calling James, Alan insisted he be untied, claiming he wished to join the fight against the monsters and prove himself useful. James suspected that Alan was merely trying to escape, but Alan insisted he was still a former hero who refused to perish in such a place. James initially hesitated, but after Alan pressed him a couple of times, he conceded that there was little choice left. Releasing Alan's shackles, James ordered everyone to ensure that monsters wouldn't attack the carriage. Alan, now smirking behind his defiance, seemed pleased to be free at last. As James prepared to give Alan command to head left, Alan suddenly launched an attack and made his escape, mocking the soldiers as fools. During his retreat, Alan also confiscated the mana potions they had, abandoning the others to face the oncoming monster horde. Ishua found his actions utterly revolting. James felt guilty for having believed Alan from the start. Arya now understood what had led Alan to become a wanted criminal, and the fact that he was once a hero appeared pitiful. Then James revealed that, unexpectedly, the monsters had ceased their assault right after Alan fled. Diana noted its similarity to the stampede at the elf village, where monsters suddenly halted and withdrew. She observed that the monsters' movements both then and now seemed oddly coordinated. A soldier soon brought a local witness to share what he had seen. The villager recounted encountering a swarm of monsters at roughly the same time and described a mysterious figure among them. A stunningly beautiful female with a transparent, water-like body, reminiscent of a mermaid. Arya deduced it must be one of the 4 heavenly demon Undine, and if so, it would explain the monsters' coordinated behavior, since she could command them. It seemed as though the Undine had saved Alan intentionally, though she wondered why a hero like him was worth saving. Ishua reflected on this and realized that investigating further would only complicate matters, making it difficult to trace Alan's movements now. For the time being, he recommended they travel to Nbish and rest there. Several days later, at Nbish Guild, everyone greeted Ishua with apparent celebration, leaving him puzzled by the strange enthusiasm. They all knew about his victory over the legendary Calamity Dragon. In recognition, the guild decided to promote Ishua and Arya to a higher rank. Ishua thought this didn't quite make sense, since they hadn't completed many quests, but Arya explained that their recent mission was critical, and others had coincidentally been on similar quests nearby. She also promoted Mythia and Ritaru to the same rank. Ishua couldn't believe how quickly they had advanced, knowing how arduous this journey had been. Diana congratulated both Ishua and Arya on reaching rank A, and Ishua realized they would need to act accordingly to uphold their new status. Mythia, meanwhile, was already planning to take on leftover quests again starting the next day. Lillian announced to everyone that a grand celebration was planned for that day. The mention of the upcoming festivities piqued Ishua and Diana's interest, prompting them to caution Arya and Lillian against drinking alcohol. Suddenly, an urgent message arrived from the capital during the night, reporting a pressing emergency mission. The news caught everyone off guard, especially since adventurers had recently faced numerous crises, making rest seem impossible after the recent defeat of the Calamity Dragon. The message detailed a mission to defend the Pendulum Fortress from an impending monster invasion. Lillian recalled that the fortress, situated in the northern region, was a vital strategic point in the fight against the demon realm. Its loss would severely weaken their defenses, and given the scale of the threat, the invasion appeared to be devastating. Reports indicated that monsters had begun coordinating their attacks more effectively, intensifying concerns among the adventurers. If even the Pendulum Fortress was struggling, it was clear they would need to double their efforts and resources to repel the invasion. Lillian suspected that the Demon Lord's schemes were unfolding at this very moment, as monstrous activity intensified around them. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Ishua deduced their next move must be to accept the quest, despite recent dangers. As leader, Lillian resolved that they would take on the challenge. Observing Ishua's party volunteering, others grew eager to join, confident that the presence of hero Lillian's team would turn the tide. Their mere participation seemed enough to inspire collective courage. Diana remarked that it might be no exaggeration to say that the salvation of the world depended on Ishua and Lillian's efforts. Weeks later, at the stronghold near Pendulum Fortress, the knights welcomed all attending adventurers and introduced a man named Lime. Ishua spoke on behalf of the group, expressing his anticipation of working alongside the knights. Lime initially mistook him for a commanding officer but was corrected. At that moment, an elderly voice shook the assembled group, commanding everyone to line up and maintain discipline. Lime then clarified that this elder was Anea, the commander of the Central Knights, emphasizing the importance of organization and readiness in this critical hour.